My husband abandoned me while I was dying, but what he said when he came crawling back changed everything. I was 6 months pregnant when we got in the car accident. Brett was driving and I was napping in the passenger seat, dreaming about painting the nursery yellow. I woke up to the sound of metal crushing and glass shattering, and then everything went black. 3 days later, I opened my eyes in a hospital bed with Brett sitting next to me holding my hand. His face was bruised, but he was okay. I wasn't. The baby was gone. My organs were destroyed from the impact, and the doctor said I'd need a heart transplant. Brett cried when he told me about the baby, and I watched tears run down his face while I felt completely numb inside. He said a drunk driver had run a red light and hit us on my side of the car. Everyone felt terrible for us. His parents swooped in and paid for everything, and his dad hired an army of lawyers to go after the other driver. My heart got worse over the next year. I was on the transplant list, but nothing was available, and I spent most days sitting on the couch struggling to breathe. One night, I told him I was scared I was going to die before a heart became available, and he said, "Don't talk like that," in this dead voice that made me feel completely alone. A few weeks later, he said, "You're sick all the time. I can't remember the last time we did anything fun." The words hit me like a slap. I said, "I'm waiting for a heart transplant." He said, "I know, but this is just our life now, and I hate it." My condition deteriorated until I could barely walk from the bedroom to the kitchen without my vision going dark around the edges. Brett started going out with friends multiple nights a week and coming home reeking of alcohol and someone else's perfume, but I couldn't find the energy to confront him. One morning, he sat down at the kitchen table and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't watch you die. You're getting worse every day, and I didn't sign up for this." I felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with my failing heart. He said, "I was grateful you survived, but I didn't realize you were never going to get better. I can't waste my life watching you deteriorate. You look terrible, and you're only going to get worse. I need to move on with my life." He moved out that week, and his parents stopped paying my medical bills. My nurse during this time was a man named Chris, who looked at me like I was still a person instead of a dying thing taking up space. After my divorce, he started visiting me outside of work just to talk. When a heart finally became available 2 years later, I called Chris before I called anyone else. The transplant was successful, and I recovered completely. Chris and I fell in love slowly and carefully, and 3 years after my transplant, we got engaged. Last month, Brett showed up at my apartment and had the audacity to smile when I opened the door. He said, "You look amazing. I heard about the transplant. I'm so glad you made it." I wanted to slam the door in his face. I said, "What do you want?" He said, "I want to apologize. I was scared and I handled everything wrong. I want another chance. We could start over and even try for another baby." The air left my lungs. I said, "I'm engaged." He said, "Please. We were good together before the accident. We could be good again. I'll even let you do all the driving this time." Something about that sentence made my skin crawl. I said, "Why would it matter who's driving? A drunk driver hit us." He blinked and said, "Right. I just meant so you feel safe." After he left, I sat on my couch staring at the wall for an hour. Why would he say that? I found the other driver's name and tracked her down like a woman possessed. She was in a wheelchair with permanent spinal damage from the accident Brett caused. She said, "Brett's father paid me $200,000 to stay quiet and not press charges. He was the one who was drunk, not me. I have the police report from before he made the whole thing disappear. I'm sorry about your baby." I felt like I was hit all over again. Chris had a friend who was a lawyer and the other driver, and I went to him together to figure out our options. Brett was arrested a week later. At trial, I testified about everything while looking him dead in the eye. Losing the baby, needing a transplant, him abandoning me while I was dying from injuries he caused. The jury saw photos of the other driver in her wheelchair and heard how his father had paid her off and buried the police report. Brett took a stand and said it was an accident and he'd been traumatized too, and I wanted to scream. The prosecutor said, "You were drunk. You caused the accident. You killed your unborn child and permanently disabled another person. Then you abandoned your wife while she was dying from injuries you caused." The jury found him guilty, and the judge sentenced him to 8 years. I married Chris 6 months later. The other driver came to my wedding. Brett's serving his sentence.